CEO Ronald Hicklin, creating the difference. I want to talk to you about understanding symmetrical layouts for the modern game. I'm your host, Ronald Hicklin. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm a silver level certified coach. I've got a patent on a bowling ball restoration system. I'm a former bowling ball designer for all four brands at Ebonite International, Ebonite Hammer, Columbia, and Track, as well as a former head coach for the U.S. Virgin Bowling Federation as well, and a competitive bowler. I want to talk to you specifically about layouts, and this is kind of an introduction, so to speak, an introduction to give you more of a better understanding behind the thought process for layouts. It's going to tell you some things about that you should know as a bowler, what layouts kind of do, and then how to use them to your advantage. The outline is kind of simple. We're going to go over the bowler specs, and we're going to use what we call the average bowler specs that we've determined to be that make up a large percentage of the bowlers in the game today. We'll talk about the lane condition that we use, kind of why that's important. We'll talk about the core shape that we use, which was a simple symmetric shape. We'll give you a couple of different layouts based on that information. Then what we're going to do is we're going to change gears a little bit, and we're going to use that information specifically to give you some different ball motions: angular, continuous, traction, and straight. We'll explain what those are. We'll give you some things to consider. We'll wrap it up, and then if you want to stick around, we'll give you some bonus content that gets very, very technical as to the why some of these things are the way they are. So we'll start with the bowler specs. We use a program called Blueprint. It's a simulation software, and what it does is it allows us to be able to simulate bowlers, ball motion, and really track flare, which is very important. So as a competitive bowler, one of the things that you should know are these values I've got listed here. You can see there's 5 different values. I have the first one called the positive axis point. You should know your ball speed, your revolution rate, your axis tilt, and your rotation. If you go to my YouTube channel on Ronald Hicklin on YouTube, you'll be able to find some videos that show you how to not only find these videos, but kind of why they're important. And also, you don't even have to find them from me per se. You can type in bowling ball speed in YouTube and find a lot of videos that will tell you how to calculate your ball speed. But also, we've got that same content on my channel as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by going over what we consider to be the average bowler's bowling ball specs. So this particular bowler, if you look on the left-hand side of the screen under the notes, it says the ball speed 17 miles an hour, the rev rate's 350 RPM, the axis tilt's 10 degrees, the axis rotation is 60 degrees, and the axis point is 5 inches over by 1/2 inches up. Now, if you look to the right of the screen, you can see the target line that we picked here, which doesn't really have a whole lot of value for what we're doing, but the other parameters put those exact same pieces of information into the computer program itself. Here's an example of a robot actually throwing the bowling ball, just so you can kind of see what that would look like. So this is an example of what you would expect to see if you were to throw the bowling ball like the average bowler. Kind of ironic that he leaves the flat 10 pin. I'll show that again. It's definitely a flat 10 pin too. If you watch the 6 pin, it just kind of goes in the gutter and it lays there. That is indicative of a flat 10 pin. Anyway, talk a little bit about the lane condition. And basically, the easier the pattern, the less the layout will have a performance impact. So that's kind of important to note as well. You know, basically what we're saying here is that it's important to know what you're bowling on. If you're bowling on a house shot, then you're going to see less of a performance impact from layouts than if you were bowling on a sport shot. This is the shape of the pattern that we use. We chose the Kego Recreation Series Main Street. Nothing overly complicated here other than to note that the pattern shape is very easy. If you look to the lower kind of left-hand side there, it says this is the shape of an easy pattern, which is fairly indicative of most house shots. So that is why we ended up choosing it. From a ball selection standpoint, this is about symmetrical balls, and there are asymmetrical core shapes as well. We'll go into that in a much later presentation. This is meant to be fairly quick. So we used a simple symmetric Game Breaker 2 core shape because it's very simple. It's fairly common, and it allows people to get a real good idea based on the type of core that it is, what it happens when you do symmetrical core bowling balls. So this is a good example of, this is that core shape. You can see we've kind of marked some various spots of the core. So the yellow piece at the top, the little yellow piece is actually called the pin. That sticks out on the surface of the ball. Below that is this white disc, and that's called the top weight block. Below that, the green is actually the inner core shape. The blue dot is actually on the surface of the ball as well. That's called the center of gravity. So the pin, the yellow, and the center of gravity, blue, are used by the pro shop to shift and manipulate the core in the bowling ball when the bowling ball is getting drilled for the consumer. The darker gray sphere is called the outer core shape, and then the lighter gray sphere is called the cover stock. And then at the bottom are kind of all the numbers that kind of go into the bowling ball. Most consumers don't really care much about these, but the two that are kind of important are the minimum RG of 2.475 and the overall differential of 0.047. Those are the two characteristics that are typically always shown by the manufacturer to kind of tell the pro shop or the bowler what kind of bowling ball that is. So a 2.475 RG is a low RG ball, which means it should want to rev up a little earlier, and a 0.047 differential would mean that it's kind of in the medium range of the differential spectrum, so it should be fairly consistent and strong. So layouts and then the ball track. So we're going to use a couple of just generic layouts, and we're going to use what's called the dual angle layout system to talk about those layouts, and we're going to show you some kind of interesting things regarding layout. So this is the first layout we're going to use. This layout just happens to be 70 degrees by 3.5 degrees by 20 degrees. That's what it's kind of called. And effectively, you can see where the holes are in the ball. And these measurements are relative to the bowler's axis point, so that 5 inches over by 1/2 inch up. So that's why the yellow and the yellow dot, which is the pin, and then the blue dot, which is the center of gravity, are kind of shifted to the right. And if you were to measure that out, it comes out to being 70 by 3.5 by 20. Now, what's most important about this is how does this roll for the average bowler that we've put in his specs? And that's what this kind of shows you. So this is actually what's going to show you is the ball track for this particular type of player. Now what's interesting about this is if you look, there's some dark blue lines and some dashed blue lines. The dark blue lines are the lines of the bowling ball as the ball rolls down the lane, and it's showing you kind of what it would look like. And the dark ones are the ones that are really in the oil. So you see these kind of come back when the ball came back on the ball return, from the ball return. Now the dashed lines you would not see. Those happen to be the ones that are the ball track when the ball's in the dry part of the lane. So you wouldn't see those. But if you notice in this particular instance that those dashed lines actually are rolling over the thumb hole, which would be really bad. Because if it's rolling over the thumb hole, that means the ball's in the air. If the ball's in the air, the ball can't hook. And that is not a good thing or a good situation for anybody to be in. Now we'll do a different layout. This layout happens to be an 80 by 4.5 by 40. Now you can see here the yellow line, the yellow dot, the pin, is in a different position. And then you can see where the blue dot, which is the center of gravity, is a different position. And once again, this is relative to the axis point. So how this ball's been laid out will give us this kind of look. Now, from a flaring standpoint, a rolling down the lane standpoint, you can see once again we've got some of those dark blue lines and a couple of dashed lines, but none of them are hitting any of the holes, which is good. But that pin, that yellow line, the yellow dot, is actually in the finger hole, which is which is not a good thing. It's a bad thing, because when you do that, you run the risk of voiding your warranty. So, kind of to summarize what you're seeing here is that when you're a bowler, getting bowling balls laid out, getting bowling balls drilled, you need to have your specs known kind of before you drill the ball, because that will help to avoid some of these issues that I'm showing you. I've shown you two different layouts, and you can see that they can produce some very undesirable results. Obviously, you don't want to drill near the pin. If you drill near the pin, you can void the warranty from the manufacturer, meaning your bowling ball is more prone to crack, and if it cracks, the manufacturer will not warranty it. Drilling bowling balls that also roll over holes is just not good because it's going to have a negative impact on performance. Now, Brunswick has a technology called DOT that they use, and DOT allows you to be able to drill the bowling ball anywhere you want, including in and around the pin position. So if you feel like your layouts that you're going to be using are going to be close to the pin position, you may want to check out one of the Brunswick DOT technology bowling balls and use one of those to be able to avoid the issue of having to get your warranty voided because you drilled too close to the pin. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing, except I'm going to give you what kind of we recommend for layouts based on this particular player's specs. So first off, there's the specs again on the left-hand side. the ball speed, rev rate, rotation, tilt, and the axis point. We haven't changed any of those values. But one of the things that we're going to talk about is the 4 types of ball motion, and these are basically characteristics of the bowling ball, or characteristics of what you should be able to see or what a bowling ball is able to do. So there's 4 types of ball motion. We've got straight, where the ball goes very long and is very straight, obviously. Traction, the ball hooks very early, and then it's kind of straight the rest of the way. Continuous, the ball hooks in the middle of the lane and keeps going all the way through the pins. And angular goes far down the lane and makes an aggressive move. Now, these illustrations, these pictures are exaggerated, but nonetheless, these are the types of ball motions that all bowling balls will fall into, and we spend a fair amount of time educating people on the 4 types of ball motion. If you're interested in more information on that, you can go also to my YouTube channel and look up the 4 types of ball motion and see some visual representations of these types of ball motions going down the lane. But for our purposes here, we're going to stick just to layouts. So this right here would be considered an angular layout, the layout that's going to get your ball down the lane and make an aggressive move. That layout happens to be 45 by 5 by 30. And what that's going to do, you can see how it looks. You don't have to worry about, we're not really too close to the pin, which is good. And as we go look at the track flare, you can see we don't have any issues with the track flare as well either. We have the blue, we have the dash, but none of them are going to hit any of the holes, which is important to make sure that we don't create any issues. The next layout is called a continuous layout. This layout happens to be 45 by 4 by 30. You can kind of see now the pin is in a different position, and that's also going to help change the performance of the bowling ball. It's going to give you that more of that mid lane hook, and it'll be all the way through the pins. Now, this ball is drilled in a stronger position, so you're going to see more of those blue lines, as you can see here. The dark blue lines are in the oil, the dash lines are in the dry, but the bowling ball does not hit the thumb hole and does not hit the finger holes. So both of those are good things, and because we've increased kind of some of the performance there, you can see that there is a little bit more of this what's called track flare on the bowling ball. So now look at the traction layout. This layout is going to give us the earliest hook. It's going to give us arguably the most hook too. So this layout happens to be 45 by 3 3/8 by 60, and obviously it looks different, and the flare pattern is pretty aggressive on this one as well. Same thing, you don't have any hitting any of the holes, and you're not too close to any of the holes with the yellow pin as well, which is really, really good. And this motion is going to give you, it's going to be a lot earlier, it's going to be much more total hook. Now, I need to preface all of this by saying that these layouts are going to give you some looks different, some different looks like we're talking about here. But layouts is about 10% or less of the performance. So we're not going to change the world here with these layouts. And as an average bowler, you may not see very much at all performance difference if you had these different layouts. But nonetheless, the fact that you're not rolling over holes is important, and the fact that you're not drilling into that pin is important to make sure that you don't void that warranty. Here's our recommended straight layout, and it's 90 by 1/2 by 60. This layout looks very, very different, obviously, than the other 3. And then from a track flare standpoint, there really isn't very much at all to be there at all, which is part of the reason why the ball goes straight. So the ball rolls over the same spot over and over and over again, which means it picks up some oil in the front part of the lane, and then when it gets to the back part of the lane, it's still kind of rolling on that oil, so it really, really mitigates or really, really minimizes the amount of hook that can be created with this type of layout. Now remember, this is important that you have to have all of the bowler specs to be able to do these layouts. So here they are again, the angular, continuous, traction, and straight for this type of bowler. So it is crucial and critical that you know those ball speed, rev rate, rotation, tilt, and axis point, because if we change those variables, then these layouts may change, and or the flare patterns you're seeing here may change. So it's really, really important that you make sure that you pay attention and have a qualified pro shop, or spend some time yourself and get these specifications so that you have a much better understanding of what kind of layouts you have on your bowling ball and what type of reactions you can get from those layouts on your bowling ball. So just to kind of wrap things up a little bit here, layouts need to be personalized, and we're showing you a good example of that. Flaring, rolling over the holes is not good for your ball motion. Be careful when drilling near the pin so you don't avoid your warranty. And layouts that work for one person with their specs may not work for another person with a different set of specs. Like I said, core type, we're talking about a symmetrical core here in this particular presentation. We'll do another presentation that will do a dive into asymmetrical balls and kind of what that looks like, which is a completely different animal. Like I said, the performance change we're talking about here is less than 10%. So like I said, you're going to be able to, you can create some different shapes and you can create some different motions, but the reaction difference isn't earth shattering here. This isn't going to make you a hugely better bowler because you have a particular layout on your ball. You can actually get around the performance issues in certain cases with using surface or whatever or the pattern that you're bowling on. Basically, what that means is find layouts that work for your game, but don't overthink it. And then, like I said, go to a qualified pro shop and get somebody to get your measurements. So, if you got more questions, you can always go to our website, ctdbowling.com. You can follow me on YouTube. We will have a follow-up presentation to this one that will go into a deep dive, and hopefully you'll stick around and watch that presentation too. From now, I'm going to jump off here. CEO Ronald Hickler from Creating a Difference. Have a fantastic day.